After the tragic events of September the 11th in 2001, one of the urgent needs that was felt by a lot of people was simply to get to understand our Muslim neighbours more deeply. We found some masks because there was smoke beginning to come into the building, and most of us strapped these on. And my predecessor, Archbishop Katy, took the very imaginative step of convening a group of scholars and teachers of Christianity and Islam here at Lambeth Palace to see what might be made possible as time unfolded. Out of that first meeting has grown a whole series of seminars. The point of these seminars has been to go a bit beyond the slogans and the politics of it all, to see if we can really understand one another as people relating to God.
We read one another's scriptures carefully, and experts on those scriptures introduce the particular texts, and we sit for an hour and a half, sometimes just in a small group, reading the text, asking one another about the text.
For me, it's probably the best interreligious dialogue conference that I come to.
It preserves something as a kind of tradition which keeps the continuity going on the one hand. At the same time, it always brings some new elements, making it innovative and creative and attractive.
Discussing texts side by side between Muslim and Christian, it is pioneering.
It's both tough work. You have to do a lot of listening and assimilating new ideas, but it's also very agreeable to be with people who've now become friends.
We're not looking for agreed statements, convergence about the things that Christians and Muslims have in common.
So that the coming of Christ in flesh becomes not the end and the seal of a process of revelation, let alone a process of discovery, but becomes the opening, the generative moment for an infinite network of relationships whose ramifications we cannot and do not know and need not know. So if the form of religious convergence at some unimaginable moment in the future is inaccessible to us, that ought not to mean that we step back from the encounter of dialogue because we're not sure. Even if we did not engage in interreligious dialogue, the same thing would be true. We do not know what the church will be, eschatologically, except that it will be where Christ is all and in all, which is a wonderful and inspiring formulation and not at all practically useful.
We're not looking for agreed statements, convergence about the things that Christians and Muslims have in common. We're looking for something a bit deeper than that. We're looking for a real imaginative sympathy that allows us to feel how the other is working and how the other person relates to God.
Without necessarily disguising our differences or looking for a kind of mechanical common ground that ignores differences.
Essentially, building bridges is about discussion. It's not necessarily about coming to solutions and finding answers. And I think it's that element of confident discussion which is the most appealing aspect of the conference.
We've been in Sarajevo, we've been in Southeast Asia, and alternating with that, meetings in Georgetown in Washington in the United States, where the university has been enormously helpful in supporting and encouraging this work. What's been most distinctive about it, I think, has been the level of intimacy that's built up among the regular members. We don't have exactly the same people every time, but we have a core of people who've been to all or most of the meetings, and even with others we try and get them back from time to time. We try and keep connections with them.
I love it, and when I have the chance I can't miss it, because all the time I learn from it, and I learn from the Archbishop and I learn from the discussion.
I've been a participant in the Building Bridges seminars almost from their beginning, and have accepted invitations to return even when calendar pressures made that difficult, because I think this is a particularly important form of Muslim-Christian dialogue.
This is my second seminar of this kind. I took part in the very first one in 2002, and this is my second one. And I was I accepted the invitation because A, the topic was germane to my concerns. Secondly, the quality of the participants was definitely one that was very attractive to me, and I wanted to engage with some of these scholars and academics and religious men and women who were here. So it was an altogether attractive proposition.
Over the 4 years, I mean, I have been able to deepen and to increase my understanding of the Bible.
This one is particularly important for me because I've been involved in dialogue, other forms of dialogue with Islam, the Shia Islam particularly, and I find here a tremendous professionalism because all the people taking part here are experts in their own right. They're coming from an international world. They are people who have an interest in sharing their insights with an honesty and a truthfulness, which is very refreshing.
Each time I come, I feel that I learn new things. Yeah, I learn new things from my Christian friends and colleagues, and I also learn new things from my Muslim friends and colleagues.
Very interesting group of people for me, since I don't really have that much contact with Muslim intellectuals.
It also helps me understand my own faith, my own thoughts. It sharpens very much my own perception and spiritual understanding.
And what a lot of people will say is that the relatively small size, the relatively private environment in which these seminars are conducted actually helps people to be more honest and more questioning sometimes than they would be in any other environment. It means that Christians can disagree with other Christians in front of Muslims, and Muslims can disagree with other Muslims in front of Christians and not feel that it's the end of the world. It means that people can lean across the table and ask the most basic questions. So what do you mean by salvation? So what do you mean by calling Muhammad the Prophet? And it won't be a bad moment or an embarrassing moment. It'll be part of a conversation. People have learned to trust each other.
We can be frank with one another, we can learn from each other in a setting that allows for trust to be built.
There's a privacy which enables people to be honest and to be themselves.
We've developed a level of trust, of a kind of intellectual camaraderie among ourselves that makes the discussions richer and richer at session after session.
Scholarly people engage and religious people engage in this issue should come together and really air their views and have a frank exchange of ideas in an environment of complete freedom and without constraint.
And the stimulus that comes from this, I think, has been witnessed to by lots and lots of people over the years. They find there are new questions they can ask. They can go back to their normal work as teachers and scholars or as religious leaders and feel that the world has been opened up a little bit more for them.
That for all the issues around building bridges, there was space for a deeper level of conversation. It wasn't dialogue in the sense of agreements or shared statements or anything. It was conversation for the sake of conversation about interesting themes.
I like to think that the Building Bridges seminar is doing something slightly subversive. A lot of people at the moment...
The different themes that have been chosen, that I feel like quite helpful in my space where I teach in Africa, in Ghana in particular.
And this is what I would like to take away, to think more about this and to tell others.
I can discuss those matters, those issues in front of the students, my students in my country, and also I think all the participants will discuss this issue in front of the students.
I've learned more from these seminars than from any number of books on Islam that I've read, more about the heartbeat of the Muslim world. I don't want these seminars to be anything other than what they are. I don't want them to be huge, high-profile, dramatic events. But I think that they do model something which is important for all of us as Christians and Muslims as we try to come closer together. And that is creating safe places, creating trust, creating a sense of a three-dimensional person behind the words and the slogans. That's what's been happening, and I think that's been very valuable.
It's very different and very special listening to Muslims speak about their own faith.
By knowing the other, I am able to deepen my own self-understanding.
We hope as time goes on that these conversations will continue and that perhaps they'll generate more and more local conversations in the different parts of the world people come from. Because one of the things about the seminars has been that we've been privileged to be able to draw on a huge variety of backgrounds. It's a place where we learn about trust, not just about why we ought to be suspicious of each other. Building bridges is personal, not just academic.
Thought-provoking.
Union.
Collegiality.
Eye-opening.
Profound.
Building bridges is about studying, listening, learning, not arguing.
Stimulating.
Pioneering.
Patient.
Frank.
Illuminating.
Fresh knowledge.
Friendship.
Warm.
Invigorating.
We've been very privileged to have people of this quality. And I hope that that global conversation about how we understand each other better can be a small contribution to the search for peace in our world and real compassion across the boundaries of faith and culture. We found some masks because of the smoke beginning to come into the building, and most of us strapped these on.
One of the things, this is in fact a sort of second conversation involving the two of you. Thanks to a certain search engine which I won't mention, it was in 2008 you had a public dialogue, and I think you have another one coming up in Edinburgh at some point as well.
We can't go to a meeting like this.
So we're in the midst of that.
I think we can.
And one of the many ways that you've connected together was through a programme called Building Bridges. So I wonder if we could just start with both of you saying a little bit about your personal interest in this kind of conversation.
Well, Building Bridges began as part of the Church of England's response to 9/11 and the fallout. And my predecessor as Archbishop, George Carey, convened a day-long conference, I think originally, on this in 2002, wasn't it? And when I became Archbishop, we decided we'd put this on a rather more robust and long-term basis, and we'd look towards some quite substantial colloquia once a year, drawing together a smallish group of Christian and Muslim scholars. We wouldn't be looking for agreed statements and negotiated outcomes, but we would try very hard to do two things: to attend to the way all of us used our scriptures with a particular kind of concentration, and to address issues which spoke to us about the world we shared. So the themes of our meetings year on year varied from poverty to death to, what else did we do? Prophecy, and all sorts of things. And they had much the same format. We'd find texts from our tradition to read together, and we would ask ourselves and each other tough questions. And over the years, I think it's fair to say we built a very trustful and constructive conversation. Mona was in from the start, and you do say
so, first of all, thank you, Simon, for allowing us this opportunity to talk about building bridges, which is really very close to my heart, and actually affected me not just personally, but also academically. But I have to say, sparing Rowan's blushes, that I wouldn't have carried on with building bridges had it not been for Rowan's chairmanship. Because in all these things, you are involved in something because there is something that's going on personally as well. It's not just an academic exercise. And so the kind of conversations we started having really were things that I hadn't experienced in any other interreligious setting. And the very first one that you referred to with George Carey was actually, I think, just to kind of, let's see who's interested. But you know, when you get a letter from number 10 and Lambeth Palace, everybody's interested. So everybody turned up. And I think they were slightly surprised that they had 50 people when they really wanted 25 people. And so the numbers were reduced. But it was exactly that for all.
Good evening, Rowan. It's the 12th of March 2017 and it's about 10:15 p.m. And obviously this is my usual Sunday evening video to reassure you that I haven't been seducing any priests over the weekend, so you can relax. Now normally I'd wax lyrical about my beloved here, who is just so handsome and gorgeous and utterly desirable and the most fabulous man I've ever met in my whole life. I just can't wait to be with him. But since I mentioned that in my introductory video on Friday that I wasn't able to show because my video turned out to be too long to edit on YouTube, I'm going to be talking about that in a minute. So I won't mention it here. Anyway, you've just seen some information there about the Building Bridges seminars, and I wanted to put that in the context of what I was talking about on Friday, so I will now show the video that I made on Friday that I wasn't able to put in my whole video then. Good evening, Rowan. It's the 10th of March 2017 and it's about 6:30 p.m. And obviously this is my usual Friday evening video to reassure you I won't be seducing any priests over the weekend, so you can relax. Because obviously I'm saving myself for my beloved, because he's so wonderful and we're made for each other. And I just can't wait to be in his arms on our bed of roses. We're going to be having a really good time. We're both really looking forward to it. We keep talking about it. Anyway, I thought this evening we could carry on having a chat about the conversation that you were in with Professor Mona Siddiqui, mainly, on the 28th of February 2017, which took place at a Baptist church in central London. I'm quite sorry I didn't come to arrest you at that event, actually. It would have been quite a good event for arresting you, wouldn't it? So you've just seen quite a long clip of that conversation anyway, from the beginning, where you're talking about the Building Bridges seminars. Now, I've talked about the Building Bridges seminars before in several videos, I think, that this is part of the globalist drive towards a one world religion, and you chaired the Building Bridges seminar every year during the time when you were Archbishop of Canterbury, and you were there for about a week at these Building Bridges seminars, so it's quite a significant amount of time every year when you're already in an occupation where you're supposed to be quite busy with quite a lot of things, so this was obviously a very high priority for you. Now, I knew that the first Building Bridges seminar, a day-long event, was arranged by your predecessor, George Carey, predecessor as Archbishop of Canterbury, and this came in the aftermath of 9/11 when people were quite anxious and most people in the West, at least, thought that Muslims did this and thought it might cause some conflict, so it would be good to have this dialogue as a kind of peacemaking initiative, I suppose. What I didn't realise, and this is why I'm mentioning this now, because I didn't even know this until I saw this video sometime last week, I didn't know that the initiative for this Building Bridges seminar, this first one, arranged by George Carey, which took place in 2002, I didn't know that the initiative for that came from Downing Street, from the Prime Minister. And who was the Prime Minister at the time but Tony Blair, that other globalist puppet, who appointed you as Archbishop of Canterbury, the first Archbishop of Canterbury to be appointed from outside of England since 1414, which I've also mentioned before, and that such a thing is unprecedented in Anglican history. So you've just seen a couple of slides there from an article in The Guardian. I'm quite sorry it's not from the Daily Mail, actually, because I know how much you love the Daily Mail, but never mind, you'll have to make do with The Guardian. So I've also quoted this article before in videos, probably about the Building Bridges seminars, but quoting anyway Professor Michel Chouillon of the Catholic University of Louvain, and the relevant part, the most important part of this article is on the screen at the moment, and there's a link to the whole article in the show notes. So I'll just read the most significant parts of this, even though the whole of it is on the screen. So Professor Michel Chouillon says, one of the aims of the Tony Blair Faith Foundation will be that of remaking the major religions. And then a bit later on, he says, this project threatens to set us back to an age in which political power was ascribed the mission of promoting a religious confession or of changing it. In the case of the Tony Blair Faith Foundation, this is also a matter of promoting one and only one religious confession which a universal global political power would impose on the entire world. So I've also shown in previous videos George Hunt, who accidentally, just an ordinary businessman who accidentally ended up at the Fourth World Wilderness Congress in 1987 and discovered all these bankers were trying to take over the world, and one of the things that they were planning was this one world religion of earth worship. They refer to the earth as Gaia, which is a Greek word meaning earth. So your interfaith activities, particularly in these Building Bridges seminars, and the fact that the initiative came from Tony Blair to start these Building Bridges seminars, your predecessor, George Carey, having arranged the first one, which was only a day-long conference in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. So I just wanted to mention that now because I was unaware before that the initiative for this came from Tony Blair. So I thought we could continue our conversation this evening about your conversation on the 28th of February. So I found another quite hilarious section of it, so I'm going to make some comments about that now. So in response to a statement about the way that some secularists criticise more moderate Christians and Muslims and religious people generally for kind of giving cover to people who are more extreme, and I suppose this is in the context of so-called Islamic terrorism, which you know a lot about. Anyway, so this is what you say. The giving cover thing is something that Richard Dawkins or A.C. Grayling frequently come out with. Yes, all right. Some of these people that you do debates with are perfectly nice folk, but actually they're just giving cover to all the murdering bigots who are lurking around the corner, just waiting to get you. So I think this may be another reference to a Marillion song here, and it is a song that I used in a video in the new year, a song called Grendel. So here's the relevant section of the song. I'm going to play it later. Heroes' delusions, with feet in the grave, lurker at the threshold, he cares not for the brave. So I don't know if you're threatening to murder me again, or are you threatening to murder my beloved and his magnificent feet, since this part of the song says with feet in the grave. You're such a lovely person, aren't you? He's a black belt in karate, so don't even think about it. And he's a lot more nimble on his feet than you as well. You better not harm my beloved's feet, I'm telling you. Because he's so wonderful and we're made for each other. And I just can't wait to get my hands on those magnificent feet. You leave his feet alone. Anyway. You then say, but there's a kind of atheist paranoia just as there's a kind of religious paranoia, but that's another story. Yeah, you see, Rowan, the thing is, if people really are out to get you, then it's not paranoia. It's a perfectly rational assessment of the situation. And I'm not paranoid about you because you are out to get me and you've been hounding me around for decades. And I wouldn't say that I was out to get you exactly, but I'm certainly not out to give you what you want, so you probably see that as threatening, whereas in fact it's you who's been threatening and inappropriate and not keeping appropriate boundaries and trying to force me to do what you want, and I'm just resisting your violent intentions towards me. And then you say, the important thing, I guess, is to recognise how deep in yourself some of these divisions go. Deep in yourself. Now, what could that possibly mean? And I would just say, and this is a comment that I've made before, when you're using a pronoun, a personal pronoun, in an impersonal sense, you tend to use the first person plural, we. We feel this, we do that, we are anxious, this kind of thing, this is what you say. But you're using distancing language here by using you in the impersonal sense rather than we. And I think, I don't know if deliberate's the word, but you're distancing what you're saying, and I think you're using it in an accusing way, in fact, and trying as usual to manipulate the outcome that you want. So you say, the important thing, I guess, is to recognise how deep in yourself some of these divisions go. So you think that we're divided, don't you? So, well, if you're going to divide people, then they have to have been together in the first place, don't they, really? Or there is some sense that they should be together, like they're the same family and they've been divided or something like that. But since I'm just some random person and not anything to do with you at all, then we're not divided. You're trying to force yourself on me and force your perverted associates on me. So that's not the same thing as division. Because I have freedom of association, the right to freedom of association, and I don't wish to associate with you, which I've told you millions of times now. So you then say, that's to be able, again, to recognise in yourself, in your own sense of God, just those points where it might go that way. So, what, you mean go the way of being a murdering bigot? Well, you keep threatening to murder me, don't you? And you are a bigot as well. Which I've already talked about in a video, because you talk about the poor as if they're an alien species, and you say that they're not going to be interested in the same things as you, and they're not like you, and this kind of thing. This is on video. I've talked about this before. So you're a bigot, really. You already decide what people's characters are and what their interests are before you've even met them. So you've just got no sense that another person, you can't know anything about the person until you hear what they've got to say, or you get to know them, that kind of thing. You already decide in your head what the person's like, and then, in the case of me, certainly, you go to really obsessive lengths to force me to conform to the character that you've decided that I have, without any reference to me as an actual person at all. So you then say, and just before I say what you say, I will say that when you're saying this, you're intensely uncomfortable and you're shuffling about in your chair and you even make a motion to get up out of the chair. So you say, to know that the impulses that lead people, this is when you start shuffling, to create intolerable pictures of God are impulses that are not alien to you. So this wouldn't have anything to do with your pretend astrophysical perverted clergy friend, would it? And I don't know why you're saying these are not alien to me. Why don't you say they're not alien to us and use the first person plural in an impersonal sense, the way that you normally do? You're distancing this language from you. You're accusing me, I think, here of creating intolerable pictures of God, and you're saying, and this comes up in the next thing that you say, you're saying that I'm the same as you. This is a familiar strategy of yours that I've commented on many times, and in fact you're doing it here, I think. Trying to say that I'm the same as you and as your perverted pretend astrophysical clergy friend, because when you can't get out of it anymore, this is what you always do, isn't it, Rowan? You say, oh yes, well I am that bad, but you're just as bad as me. This is the only strategy you've got, really, after when you've said you're projecting and that doesn't work, the person keeps on criticising you and pointing out these things in your behaviour that are unacceptable. You're trying to force yourself on someone who doesn't want anything to do with you. So this is what you're saying. Oh yes, I am that bad, we are that bad, but you're just as bad, and you need to face the fact that you're as bad as me and this disgusting pervert David Pete as well. Well, I'm not, Rowan, because I've never tried to force myself on anybody, and I haven't hounded anyone around the country for decades obsessively the way that you have, and gone around slandering them and tried to wreck everything in their life. And I also haven't told a pack of lies about bogus terrorist activities that have led to wars and hundreds of thousands of people dead. So there's no point employing this strategy, because I know it's total crap, and it's just because you simply won't face the fact of how utterly degenerate you are. You won't face the fact that you're wicked. You've got this covert narcissistic personality, which means that you think you're superior to everybody, but you need to be presenting yourself as the helper and saviour of people as well, and you violently resist anyone who doesn't give you continuous positive feedback in relation to this. So this is the reason why you won't face how utterly degenerate you are, and the fact that you're causing people problems and suffering, and that you're not the solution to people's problems, you're the cause of people's problems, and you're not the solution to my problems, you're the cause of my problems. So you then say the longing, the lust, and you emphasise lust there. You emphasised all the other words I've been emphasising as well. So you say the longing, the lust for a shortcut, for the clear affirmation of your justification. All of that stuff. Well, I haven't got any longing for a clear affirmation of my justification. You have. This is why you keep trying to force me into prostitution, because you want to be justified. You want to create me into the person you've been fantasizing about, rather than just accepting that I am who I am and that there's nothing that you can do about it. So you've got this longing, this lust, for the clear affirmation of your justification, all of that stuff. I don't care at all. It wasn't me who chose this situation. In fact, I just kept walking away from all the disasters that you created. for me, and you just kept following me and persecuting me and involving more people in persecuting me. And I don't even care about that. I just want to forget about you and get on with my life. I didn't want to go through all of this. I haven't chosen it. Other people have forced it on me. So I haven't got any longing for justification. I don't care. I keep saying this, I've said it, you know, what I want is to spend eternity in heaven with Christ and the saints, and nothing in relation to you is even relevant to that, so I don't need any clear affirmation of my justification. This is what you want, and you live in this fantasy world, and you're saying that's what I want. Well, I haven't chosen this situation. Other people have forced it on me, and they're quite prepared to kill me, to bulldoze on with it, and the least important thing in all of it. And also, you've come up with all these ideas of how to persecute me and harass me and all this kind of thing, and having me assaulted and sexually assaulted with remote weapons. And you've done all of this to me to try and force me to do what you want so you can have a clear affirmation of justification. Yet you're using this distancing language again, your justification. Well, it's not my justification. I don't care about it, Rowan. This is something else that you've just made up in your head. It's actually you who's desperate for a clear affirmation of your justification. Well, you're never going to be justified, because I'm not giving you what you want, and you've got no right to try and force me to do that. I'm absolutely nothing to do with you, so just zip your trousers up and fuck off. So you then labour this point even further by saying, it's no accident, I think, that one of the Christian desert fathers, and you emphasise fathers and you raise your voice an octave there to try and sound authoritative, which is a technique of yours that you employ nearly all of the time. So one of the Christian desert fathers in the 4th century says, when asked for advice for a young monk, and then you say this in a really imperious tone, like you're lecturing someone, i.e. me, that this is what I should do. You need to lay down that heavy burden of self-justification. Well, lay it down, Rowan, then, because you're the one who's carrying the heavy burden of self-justification. And I would also say, this Christian desert father that you're talking about in the 4th century was asked for advice for a young monk. Well, I'm not a young monk, am I? I'm not young. I'm not a young monk. I'm a mature person. I'm a desert mother. So it would be me who would be giving advice to the young monk, wouldn't it? I'm not the young monk who needs the advice. Just because you're 66 years old and you're still fixated in a psychological state of infancy from which you refuse to move on, you just keep throwing tantrums and stamping your foot and trying to coerce and manipulate the outcome you want. I'm not your mother, Rowan. I'm not giving you what you want. So just stop throwing tantrums and trying to manipulate me. It'll never get you anywhere, as I've now told you millions of times. So you then say, and that tells me something about my burden, and the burden that religious people so often try to negotiate, and negotiate so often so unsuccessfully. Well, I'm not negotiating, Rowan. This situation is not negotiable. I've set the boundaries and you're not violating them. So, I'm not sure what you're saying here. Perhaps you're saying that this is the reason for your burden, that other people, i.e. me, have this heavy burden of self-justification, and that I'm so desperate to justify myself that I'm creating your heavy burden. Well, I'm not creating it. I never wanted anything to do with this situation, and I keep protesting about it. I don't care about you in the slightest. Everybody knows what a scumbag you are, and you wouldn't get away with doing what you've been doing before to me because everybody knows what you've been up to. So I'm not even bothered about it. So it's got nothing to do with me. It's other people who decided this, not me. But on the other hand, you have got this heavy burden yourself of self-justification. So I think you're also saying here again, well, oh yes, I know that I'm this bad, but other people are just as bad as me. And that tells me something about my burden and the burden that religious people so often try to negotiate, and negotiate so often so unsuccessfully. So there it is again. Oh yes, well I am that bad, but you're all just as bad as me. So you then say, it's no good saying, oh well, some people are just bigots, but you know, I'm nice, I'm enlightened. But to say, yeah, horribly, I can see how one might land there, and I need to keep what I believe very carefully under scrutiny to see how far am I binding my egotistical fantasies to God. I think you might be talking about S&M there again. It's no good saying, oh well, some people are just bigots, but you know, I'm nice, I'm enlightened. Well, you're not nice or enlightened, and you are a bigot. You're a really nasty piece of work. So you say, yeah, horribly, I can see how one might land there. Well, you haven't only landed there, you've built yourself a fantastic residence there, and you've got no intention of moving out of it, have you? You're wallowing in a cesspit of filth and corruption, and you've got no intention of getting out of it, and you just try to drag other people down there with you. Because all your attempts to force yourself on me, you don't want to join me or adopt my values or my style of life or anything like that, do you? You want to drag me down to your level. This is because of your narcissistic delusions. You want to feel that you're better than other people, and instead of improving yourself to that end, then you try and drag other people down to the level where you are, and you do this verbally anyway, by this strategy that you employ, saying, oh yes, well I am that bad, but you're all just as bad as me. Well, the vast majority of people on earth are not as bad as you, Rowan. You're a psychopath, and there's no one worse than you, only other psychopaths who are the same as you. And how far you're binding your egotistical fantasies to God? Well, your egotistical fantasies and God in your imagination are one and the same thing, because you think you are God. And you've set yourself above other people. You want to be special in the eyes of God and distinguished from other people. So your egotistical fantasies and God are virtually indistinguishable. I think you're saying this to try and make out that you've got some self-awareness and that you're carefully monitoring this so that you don't end up in this degenerate and disturbed state where you think you're the Messiah, but unfortunately you're there already and you don't seem to have any intention of shifting. Anyway, I shall leave it there for this evening because it's quite late now, because I've been faffing about editing my video for a long time. And obviously I'll be wanting to go to sleep as soon as possible so I can be dreaming about my beloved and his magnificent feet all night long, and how we're going to be together on our bed of roses on those lovely silk sheets, having a really good time in each other's arms. But don't forget to be alert. I know you're back in Britain now because somebody tweeted that they'd seen you in Cambridge on Friday, so I will be turning up to arrest you. So don't forget to tip me the wink if you'd still like me to kick you in the balls. Hasta la próxima.
a bit further on that. I mean, in many respects, I know these things are relative, but you represent pretty central traditions within your respective faiths, and yet there are others who are pursuing a much more barbaric approach to it. To what extent do we take responsibility? I mean, I remember once being accused of, you know, though I am very far probably from a fundamentalist and certainly someone, I mean, my very existence somehow gave cover to this because I was a Christian. I mean, that's a very harsh way of putting it, but nevertheless, the opposite side is that we don't take any responsibility and say, oh yes, we're not like these people at all, and we don't have a connection with them through our faith or theology.
That's a very important point. The giving cover thing is something that people like Richard Dawkins or A.C. Grayling frequently come out with. Yes, all right, some of these people that you do debates with are perfectly nice folk, but actually they're just giving cover to all the murdering bigots who are lurking round the corner just waiting to get you.
Delusions with feet in the grave. Look at the threshold. He cares not for the girl. He cares not for the bride.
But actually they're just giving cover to all the murdering bigots who are lurking round the corner just waiting to get you. That there is a kind of atheist paranoia, just as there's a kind of religious paranoia, I think. But that's another story. The important thing, I guess, is to recognize how deep in yourself some of these divisions go.
I'll drive you crazy.
That's to say, to be able, again, to recognize in yourself, in your own sense of God, just those points where it might go that way. To know that the impulses that lead people to create intolerable pictures of God are impulses that are not alien to you. The longing, the lust for a shortcut, for the clear affirmation of your justification, all of that stuff.
Now he's caught a nasty sort of person. They gave him time, North Bank
It's no accident, I think, that one of the Christian desert fathers in the 4th century says, when asked for advice by a young monk, you need to lay down the heavy burden of self-justification. And that tells me something about my burden, and the burden that religious people so often try to negotiate, and negotiate so often so unsuccessfully.
What did you say? Oh, you're breaking up on me. Sorry, I cannot hear you. I'm kind of busy.
It's no good saying, oh, well, some people are just bigots, but, you know, I'm nice, I'm enlightened. But to say, yeah, horribly, I can see how one might land there, and I need to keep what I believe very carefully under scrutiny to see how far am I binding my egotistical fantasies to God.
And meet me in my boudoir, make my body say I like it.
Late last night when the squire come home, inquiring for his lady, some denied and some replied she's gotten with the blackjack Davy. Caribbean queen, give her a sharing the same dream, the moons and the hearts that beating one. No more love on the run.
Long live the World Trade, long live the King, yo. I'm from the Empire State. That's
Concrete jungle where dreams are made of. There's nothing you
that boy good.
count your New
Here's Lady Gaga.
She's got both hands. She's got both hands. At this point, I've gotta choose between. Don't go, Alejandro, Alejandro. Hands up, little monsters! I love you, New York.
And late that night when the Lord came home, inquiring of his lady, oh, the servant said on every hand, she's gone with the raggle-taggle gypsies, oh.
The footman memorized the number, but the prince still holds both the slippers. A new dream of Paris for a bed sit and Canterbury tales. Canterbury tales.
Try to change me, you're wasting your time. Now I got something much better in mind. Robert De Niro's waiting, talking Italian.
It's why Catholics have the best sex.
Oh, what care I for my house and my land? What care I for my money? Oh, I'd rather have a kiss from the wild gypsy's lips. I'm away with the raggle-taggle gypsy. I'm away with the raggle-taggle gypsy. I'm away with the raggle-taggle gypsy. Oh.
With his hammer